Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's masterclass. Today's masterclass will be hosted by Reshma from Illume. Just to give you an introduction about Illume Research Consulting, founded by Reshma Bachwani, has been instrumental in helping organizations in the not-for-profit sector design and implement research-driven strategies that enhance impact. Illume has worked closely with Xstep in understanding the user's mindset and how different stakeholders interact with digital learning platforms, providing insights to enhance user engagement and content delivery. Reshma Bachwani is a behavioral researcher with over 2 decades of experience in consumer insights and marketing strategies. She pioneered a unique process to explore subconscious consumer behavior, receiving recognition for her award-winning research presented at the Market Research Society of India. Known for her meticulous, bias-free approach, Reshma has worked with clients like the Xstep Foundation, Shikshalokam, Societal Thinking, and the Gov Foundation, conducting qualitative research that drives actionable insights. Today's masterclass by Reshma will explore 3 distinct caregiver personas and their unique interactions with tech. Some embrace it, some struggle, and others seek balance, each impacting a child's learning and development differently. We will be exploring through real-life insights how technology can be a tool for empowerment rather than a challenge. This also ties into one of the tenets of Pattham Now, that is to recognize that the first 8 years are a window of opportunity. By acknowledging this, maybe it is more likely that one finds solutions and adopts a mindset of seeing abundance. I hope that this masterclass also allows for a new way of seeing and working with the caregivers that we do. Over to you, Reshma.
Hi, thank you for taking time out to join the masterclass. And I'm sure you have come up with some thoughts about the caregivers that you work with during the course of your work and how they interact with technology solutions, as we are seeing more and more technology solutions come into the fore. So this research, to give you a quick background about this, this research was done with caregivers in 4 cities. It was Jaipur, Lucknow, Chennai, and Kolkata. I think we also spoke to mothers in Indore at some point of time. And the idea was, it did not start off with the idea that we would go and identify personas. We just wanted to understand what caregiving looks like today. What are some of the challenges that they face, etc. But we realized that each caregiver is invested in their own parenting journey in a very different way. And there are certain common threads that emerged through these conversations that we had with them. Based on the way they're invested in their parenting journey, these personas emerged. And as we have progressed in our work, over the years, we are seeing a consistency in the way these personas are, come across in terms of the way they handle parenting. This was a very interesting turn of events, because we often, whenever we get into research, we go with some assumptions and about how the users would potentially interact with the programs that we have designed or the solutions we designed. And there are certain things that jump out at us, but there are other things which remain on the periphery. And there is a tendency, if one looks at these things which don't align with the hypothesis that we went with, there could be a tendency to actually reject some of these segments which lie at the periphery like outliers. But these personas actually helped us understand that each one of these segments interact with these solutions in a different way, and all of these narratives and counter narratives are valid. It's just the way we present our programs to them or the solutions to them might vary, but it's a nuance rather than a go or a no-go decision. So having said that context, I want to take you through. So there are about 3 personas that we've identified. I'm sure there could be more, but these are the ones which come up as recurring themes for us. And the first one of them is the struggler mom. So I want to take you through the story of this struggler mom, and let's see if you are able to identify, or it brings you back to some of the work that you've done with caregivers to see whether you're able to identify somebody like this in your work. So here's a story of Nancy. We've just called her Nancy for the sake of naming a persona. And to give you the context, now imagine if you can. So, this is going to be a story where we are going to try and bring out some nuances from Nancy's life. And before I deep dive into her life, I just wanted to tell you that the poster is just a takeaway for you. We'll be sharing the link to the poster later on. While I'm talking about Nancy's life, you can zoom into the poster. I tried doing that earlier, and I was able to zoom in and see parts of it which I wanted to focus on. And if you can also, as a request, keep tune out of your cell phones and of anything that you it might distract you, so that you can really imagine what Nancy might be living in her life and the kind of challenges that she might face. So, to give you a sense of Nancy's life, she's sitting on a sofa, like a pretty worn out sofa. She's exhausted after another long day of work. We found that Nancy and the struggler mom persona is mostly found amongst families which have a nuclear setup. Her 5-year-old daughter is sitting glued to the phone. She's watching Peppa Pig for what feels like the 100th time. The familiar sounds of the show fill up the room, and it gives Nancy a moment of peace. So, this is not a perfect moment, but at least her daughter Aru is quiet and content, and giving Nancy the much needed time to think about Aru's health and the million other questions that constantly keep buzzing in her head as a caregiver. This was a interesting revelation for us, because very often when we see the kids are with the mobile phones and the mother is just sitting idle, it's if one can quickly jump to an assumption that it is the mother who would be possibly looking for idle time or not invested. But here is a mother who's actually using this time because she's preoccupied with some of the questions that she has about her parenting. And why do these questions remain in our mind when, as moms, and if you've been through that mom journey, you would know, is because sometimes it's very difficult to trace back to the root cause of these problems. Some of the times, the problems are too embarrassing for the mom to share with others, and sometimes it's too complex. So in case of Nancy's life, I can cite an example, and she was born, her child Aru was born to her after 4 miscarriages. So please keep in mind, we've created this persona based on many caregivers and snippets from their life. This is not the life of one particular person. And so this child is born after a lot of effort or miscarriages, etc. And at that point of time, young parents in a nuclear family are so scared to handle the child without any elderly support. When she started moving towards solid foods, they actually did not give her any vegetables to eat, given the fear that she would choke on these vegetables. And that led to a whole turn of events where the child has developed an aversion perhaps to textures or perhaps to the vegetable flavors. And as a child who is older now, who is capable of chewing, etc., rejects vegetables, which leads to poor fiber in the body and therefore constipation. Now, Nancy is not able to trace these steps back and figure out what could be the solution to the problem. And she's also finding these kind of problems too difficult or embarrassing for her to discuss with any of her mother, the peers. And therefore, she is desperately seeking a solution of something which would come up as a parenting expert. It's almost like a Google for a mother. And someone in the neighborhood talks to her about an app. So we've used Jaadui Pitaara, which is an app developed by the government of India. Correct me if I'm wrong, Varun. As a window to understand, is it government of India?
Yeah, the NCRT is
NCRT.
taking this.
So this was just our window into understanding the caregiver interaction with technology. It was, we just used this as a handle, and somebody in the neighborhood tells her about. So in our research, we actually told them about the Jaadui Pitaara, but here in the context of the story, a neighbor tells her about it, and she It's touted as an expert resource for parents, which is filled with safe and engaging content for children. And this is just what Nancy feels that she has been looking for. She feels that here is an app which is going to solve all my questions, whether it's to do with the child's health, or to do with nutrition and whatnot. However, Jaadui Pitaara was a learning app. So there was some kind of a dissonance there that she felt. And she also is very enthused about the fact that it is safe content as compared to all the YouTube content and the Instagram content, which can lead children into all sorts of wrong directions. So she feels reassured, but she doesn't take too much time to explore the features of this app. And it's clearly mentioned whenever this kind of a technology app was created, at least in the context of Jaadui Pitaara, that this is an app meant for the caregiver. It is not an app that is to be directly handed over to the child. It was almost like a caregiver's ally. Despite that, she overrides that instruction and she hands it over to her daughter, Aru, thinking that my child is very conversant with technology, she's very smart, and she's now going to be able to figure this out. And Aru, her child is so used to, and she's a child of the digital age. She's so used to the content and navigating all of it. Her eyes are darting across the screen, looking at all of the colorful icons, and there is that initial interest that gets captivated. But soon, Aru begins to feel that this is not as enticing as my Peppa Pig content. So there is a familiarity which she is used to, and she doesn't really want to experiment with anything else. There's also, like I mentioned, that was designed keeping in mind the parent and wholesome content, etc. So the visual language of it, maybe the way the cartoons are, or maybe the kind of content, these days the content also tends to be fast-paced. But if you want to create responsible content for children, then maybe the pace of it seems too outdated for Aru. And she soon loses interest in navigating this app. And she tells her mom after a few times of exploring the app that I don't think I'm interested in it. I want to watch my old Peppa Pig episodes. Now, Nancy is a kind of a caregiver the struggler mom as such, who doesn't like to create conflicts with or get into conflict situations with her child, because if you remember the context, she comes from a nuclear family, already harrowed, already at her wit's end on what to do with her child, and is not getting enough time to think about the important things, and therefore does anything to avoid a conflict. She will short circuit the entire negotiation zone and give the child whatever she wants. And she reassures herself by thinking that at least my child is watching stuff which is safe and age appropriate, and therefore how bad can this content be for a child? Not that the content is bad for the child, except that the technology was not designed for this child. And she tries to peer into the app and ask some amount of parenting questions which she had earlier, like the constipation issue or what to do with a diaper rash, etc. But this app is a learning app. It's clearly not designed to address some of those concerns. Besides, it is also an intelligent app, which in the sense that it's not just throwing content to the user, but there is an AI bot which can be quizzed or questioned for it to throw up the relevant kind of content to you. Now, a person who's used to clickbait and YouTube and instant buffering content finds even this much of a lag time, the 20 seconds of lag time it takes to process the information and throw it back to you, they find it time taking and too slow. So they start to think of this as an old world fuddy-duddy thing. And but this parent, this caregiver doesn't completely reject this technology platform. They're starting to see that it's giving them some ideas on what to do with their child. Like there's some threads of hope. So, for example, she knows that getting her child to sit and study in the direct, literal way is very difficult. Everybody, all caregivers now these days, when we talk to them, they know that बच्चों को खेल खेल में पढ़ाना चाहिए. Like we need to teach them through games. So they find in this app certain threads where there are learning games. And using these threads, they go back to their comfortable or their familiar platform, YouTube, and start to look for these games. Okay. They also know that meal times are a battle for the child when the child is not given the screen. So they reassure themselves that at least during the meal time, I can give her some learning content which might be useful for her. And she wants her time off in the afternoon. So when she's lying down peacefully, she's handing over the app to the child and thinking that the child will be able to use it safely. Okay. But the whole experience of her using this a technology solution is child-led. It depends on what the child is going to, how much the child is going to engage with it, and whether it's going to hold or sustain the interest of the child. It's clearly not the expert resource. Like the mothers actually told us, if you're familiar with shadi.com, okay, they said for marital requirements, shadi.com is a one-stop solution. Like even for my parenting journey, I want it to be a one-stop solution. I don't want to then have to refer to Google for something and YouTube for something else. So in the end, it's Nancy did find a solution that worked for her at the moment. And it would have perhaps worked for her had she dug deeper, but she missed out on the opportunity to actually use it to its full potential. And the app just now remains on her phone, waiting for her to take the next step and explore it completely. So that was Nancy's journey. The next caregiver which I'm going to talk to you about, another persona, is the solution seeker mom. Okay. So this is, you will realize as I read through the personas and share the stories with you, you will realize that this persona is slightly different from Nancy in terms of the way she handles negotiations or conflicts, in terms of her drive and how invested she is in her parenting approach. Also, what is her locus of control? So is she strongly internally driven or not? And how does she look at learning? So this is, I'm for the sake of naming this persona, we've called her Neha. Now we found the solution seeker persona was typically found in uh, joint families. So they had, and these were typically younger moms. They were moms in their late 20s, sometimes even in the mid 20s. So they were, on one hand, it was an interesting dynamic. On one hand, you have the support of a joint family, not with respect to necessarily parenting and caregiving, but at least with respect to other household chores and managing things in the house. And therefore, it leaves the mother a little bit of time and mental and physical space to be able to invest time with her child. On the other hand, she's also a young mom. So she's tuned into what is the new narratives around education, about how children ought to be raised, and what to keep them away from, etc. And then she's raising her child against the backdrop of a large joint family, or sometimes just the husband with old world values. And so she constantly feels this sense of tug, that there is one reality and on the other side is her dream. And uh, because of this tug and because of this context, she goes out of her way to spend time with her child. So she's the one who says, I will manage my chores in the morning and at late in the evening, but the afternoons and early evenings are going to be exclusively for my child. She's the one who says, I don't mind playing games with my child. I don't mind singing and dancing for my child if that means that it will make the child happier and help her develop a connect with the child and also help them learn in an interesting way. So this is her mindset. I'm going to tell you a little more about her life. So, like many modern mothers, Neha finds herself in a constant, sorry about the screen, she finds herself in a constant battle against the lure of the mobile phone and the screen and other distractions that dominate the child's life. In fact, one of the moms actually told us that in a joint family, so to say, there are so many members in the house, and one would feel from the outside there are so many loving caregivers available to a child. But the reality is that everyone is sitting in their own rooms and everyone is looking into their own mobile phones. So she is constantly facing the battle where the child is moving or wandering around from room to room. And we've all been through situations where there would be a grandfather or a grandmother looking at the phone, and the child will be on the shoulder here, peering into what the grandpa or the father might be doing. So that's her battle. She often feels alone in this struggle, especially because either her spouse is preoccupied or the spouse himself doesn't have the willpower to keep his mobile phone usage in limits, within checks. And when she gets into any kind of a, so she doesn't give in to the negotiations or the demands of the child very easily, because she has a long term vision in mind and she knows what is good for the child. But these moments of negotiation are soon turn into a conflict situation where there is a battle of wills, and it leads to almost a strained atmosphere in the house. And her husband, instead of supporting her, tells her things like, because of you there is this strain in the atmosphere in the house. In Hindi they say, घर का माहौल खराब करके रख दिया है तुमने. And it's at the end of the day, these are children. Like, if they don't play at this age, then when do you expect them to play? Like, you're being too hard on them, you're taking everything too seriously, etc. So she finds herself fighting this lone battle. She's also realizing that this connect with the child is breaking, and therefore the child is constantly miffed at her, in an irritable mood, is not listening to her even when there is a genuine uh, concern that she expresses with respect to their health or with respect to their safety, etc. Again, we've been through these situations where children are so exposed to life outside, and even if we want to really raise them with very sound parenting values, it's very difficult to get them to understand at a tender age that it's not good for you, because they come back and tell things like, then why is the world doing it? So she finds her child often dismisses her genuine request to keep the child safe or to keep the child healthy, and there's a power struggle often. And whenever the mother sees, whenever the caregiver tells the child, let's say, to give you an example of, wash your hands and eat your food, the child would argue back with the mother. But when she starts to use Jaadui Pitaara, or she starts to use this technology platform, there is a lot of content in the platform where the children are actually enacting situations. It's not actually meant for that. It's not a situation where the children need to enact, but there is content where either a teacher is teaching a bunch of children, or a bunch of children are playing some learning games. So what starts to happen is that there is a set of children in the homes who are seeing this content with their moms and beginning to see that other children are also doing this. Now, we all have mirror neurons, and children tend to have mirror neurons. I don't know whether they are stronger or not. I still need to find out that, but they're definitely more sensitized to these things, and that is why we have this phrase, monkey see, monkey do. So when they start to see other children playing these learning games in the screen, they also suddenly start to feel enthused about playing these back at home. And the mom is able to see this mimicking behavior and connect it back to her own experience, where she says that whenever the child's friends come home, and the child sees that they are able to eat on their own, they are able to eat at a dining table, etc. My child, who would not otherwise listen to me, is now able to start mimicking his friends in real life, and therefore she makes a connection between the real life and the technology solution that she finds. So the two of them, now she's very, very clear that she's anyway trying to keep her child away from the mobile phone, and she's clear she's not going to hand over the phone just to the child. In fact, moms were telling us that when their children demanded the mobile phone from them to explore this app, they had to tell them things like, this is something which is where I'm part of a research, so I don't want to mess with this app, and therefore I'm not going to allow you to use it independently. They use that as an excuse, but it shows the mindset and where they're coming from, and therefore they're starting to now explore these things together. So the mom says, I always hold the phone. There are two children on either side, and we are seeing these things together. Or I see what is to be done. Sometimes she says, I'm in the kitchen and I query the app. Uh, and I hear my two kids fighting with each other in the background, and I query the app saying, my kids are fighting and I'm in the kitchen. What can I give them as an activity to do? And she gets quick solutions from the app, which are engaging, which are fun, and which are novel. And or even if they're not novel, they are at the spur of the moment, uh, available to her on her fingertips, and she's able to engage them. And now the kids are beginning to get hooked on to these activities. So one day there was a situation where the younger kid was told to count onions and potatoes in the kitchen basket, while the elder kid was engaged in something else outside. The activity which the mom asked him to do. And now the younger kid was finding this whole thing so interesting that the next day, on his own accord, started to pick up some more vegetables and add them together and count the numbers, etc. So the mom is also beginning to realize that this is not passive viewing. It's not that, because she says that when they watch TV, they are hooked onto it for the duration that the TV is in front of them. But as soon as the TV is off, first though it's a big problem to get the TV, to turn the TV off or to take the mobile phone away from them. It leads to irritation. But after the TV is on, they don't recall and apply some of the things which they see to their own life. But in case of this, the games that they were playing, there was a sustained interest and they were able to plug back into it even on the next day. So she starts to see a momentum building up. They start to do things together. Now, from this point of mom is always correcting us and telling us not to do XYZ, there is a sense of mutuality. There is a sense of shared experience. We are watching the story together. We are sharing a joke together, which is in the app, which is part of the story, or mom is able to play with us, etc. And this comes as a very gratifying thing to this mom, because this mom would have liked to otherwise even play with her children. But she said she goes to the park and she sees other moms sitting at the periphery and telling her, this is our time to relax. Why are you going and engaging with your children at this point of time? So she finds that there is a social pressure on her. She can't go and play with them outside. And the home was not an environment which she associated with play. But this is kind of shifting that atmosphere at home, and she's now able to play with her children at home. So the connect is starting to build. And because the connect is starting to build, I think the biggest payoff for her was that her children have now started listening to her. So uh, the mothers actually said things like, "Mera bachcha abhi meri baat maan raha hai." I'm able to speak to him where he's able to receive whatever I'm saying without judgment. And this really brings a lot of clarity to her parenting journey, because uh, now when the child is actually creating a fuss about something, she's now beginning to realize it's not an everyday, every hour situation. He might really be uncomfortable with doing something that I'm asking him to do, and hence he's creating a fuss. So it's not the flavor of the relationship. And that clarity is really empowering her with the feeling that I'm able to do things for my child. I'm able to steer them in the right direction and guide them, etc. So she moves from a place of doubt to moves from a place where she would look into other, dip into other places or other people for advice, to now starting to feel that sense of empowerment within herself, that I have the answers to some of the questions that I've been grappling with. And I think the most enduring moment for them was when they realized that the true magic is not in the app, but in the bond that she's building with her daughter or her child, one story, one game, and one lesson at a time. And so that's the solution seeker mom's journey. And I'll just give you a couple of minutes to absorb her journey before I can take you to the last persona, who is the solution creator. So this is I know I've been telling you, giving you information at, which is quite a lot. Hopefully, the anecdotes and the stories are going to make it a little relatable and not feel like an information overload. But yes, you have the sheet in front of you, the poster, and you later on even have a link to the presentation that we'll share with you for you to be able to recall some of these things. So now the last persona is a solution creator. Now, sometimes it's easy to get confused between the solution seeker and the creator, but this persona or this caregiver is a very different person. We didn't get a consistent thread from this kind of a caregiver with respect to her family background in terms of whether they came from nuclear families or predominantly joint families. It didn't seem to matter, this demographic background as such. But what was really standing out for us was that this persona she is a very intelligent, aware mom. So she's a mom who is reflective, she's observant, and she's, as a result of this journey that she has undertaken, uh, she is also very informed about what's happening in the world of education, parenting, children, etc., which is the reason why she feels confident about her choices. She's not shaky. She's not trying to battle between the old world and the new world. She's very, very sure. And she feels, but despite being sure, it's not like she's cocksure and unwilling to accept new information. She's going through a reflexive process of finding information, trying to apply it to the context of her child, observing whether that information is working for the child or not, and then fine tuning and tweaking her parenting journey based on whether it is based on her earlier feedback. So that's the kind of mindset we are dealing with. Many of these moms tend to be from urban context, maybe from a slightly privileged background where where they wouldn't have just finished their 12th, or they would have finished their education right up to the graduation level. Some of them we've also found were in the challenging situations where their children had neurodiversity or some such issue, which is so difficult for people to grapple with that they started to almost consume information and process information about them, about these situations, and become experts in their own right. Not to say that all of these are in the urban context. We found people even in Jaipur and Lucknow and smaller towns, and those were the moms who were doubling up as tutors. So they would tutor preschool children, and therefore there was an incentive to actually stay abreast with the whole movement in the education sector. Okay, so I'm going to call this mom Prachi, and Prachi has been a very meticulous person in her life, both in her role as a mom and also as a teacher for her preschool kids. Her life revolves around planning, researching, understanding the best methods to nurture young minds. She doesn't follow the latest trends blindly. She takes the time to analyze what is working, what has real value, and what's going to make a very meaningful difference to the development of a child. And she's always on the lookout for something new, something better. So, for example, some of the moms we spoke to spoke about the fact that she noticed her child, who is in the second grade, is not able to read very fluently. And now she's also aware of the fact that second grade is a threshold here. If the child is not able to build up her fluency for reading in this year, things are going to start getting tougher and tougher as she progresses higher. So something had to be done. And this mom uh, also knew that phonics is another way of introducing reading to a child, or making the whole reading process easier. But the information that she would find on YouTube, where it is with respect to phonic, whenever she would look for it, was the typical phonic songs with all the letters of the alphabet, etc. She didn't move beyond that. But when she started to use Jaadui Pitaara, she realized, as a result of the scrolling, that it's giving her a video which had a little rhyme on every letter of the alphabet. So she was sharp enough to notice the difference, that she saw L and then a video on L and then a video on N. And then she went exploring that I'm sure there's going to be more. And she started to use that with her child, which was a little fleshed out in terms of phonic sounds and with respect to one letter of the alphabet and different usages, etc. And that her child found engaging. So she was able to build on that content for her child, and it was teaching the child in a fun, engaging way. It kind of impressed Prachi, and she thought of this whole content as being very thoughtfully curated. So it's aligning with her own value system and her own personality. Prachi is also a person who realizes that she has to play the dual role of being a pacifier and a disciplinarian to her child. So she goes on to talking about the fact that in the earlier times there used to be grandparents and other loving adults around a caregiver, around a child. So whenever there was the mom trying to discipline the child had, and the child, let's say, gets into a conflict situation or has a meltdown, there was at least someone else who was more in a emotionally regulated situation, who would be able to take over and help the child overcome their dysregulation or overcome their sense of fear or stress. Right now, as we are living in nuclear families, these things are not available to us anymore. So one minute we are disciplining the child, on the next minute literally we have to calm down our nerves and become the pacifier, which is a very difficult transition to make at the spur of the moment if you've ever experienced this. And she realizes this app is filling this gap for the mom. So whenever she is in a situation where there is something, where the child is feeling really upset about something, and your brain literally shuts down as a parent because sometimes they're screaming and whining and crying, you can really look into you can access the app and you can get something at your fingertips which might distract the child and draw attention away from the problem situation. So she uses it at such points of time, and she also very aware of the fact that children are going to spend more and more time away from parents, and she knows that elders in her family, her mom or her grandmoms or well-meaning aunts, have always told them things like, there's a phase during which you can only build connection with a child, and those are the foundation years, after which when they grow up, there is less and less window of avenues available for building the connection. So do it right now. Now she uses this very intelligently. So she queries the app on trying to find stories which bring out or elicit mother-daughter bonding. And she says this was a very unique thing which I found in the app. I did not find, because these, when you Google for stories or you even look for YouTube and kids stories, you often find the usual Panchatantra and animal stories, etc. So if you want to specifically look for something like this, where will I find it? And she was using it to her advantage, being so nuanced in her search. And she and the earlier persona, the solution seeker, they both admitted to the fact that the children are hooked onto the mobiles because we are hooked onto mobiles. Like we have so she actually said, like, I can't live even a single day without accessing Instagram. And if I'm going to do that, like, with what authority do I tell my child to keep away from it? So she realizes she's looking for a solution, and it's a double-edged sword in her case, because she's also using the screen time as a tool to find out more information, which we all do. Like, when we are spending time on our phones, we may not be spending time wastefully. Like, we are seeking information. But ironically, the amount of time we spend on the phone is also the time that we are spending away from our children. Like, we're not even making eye contact with them during that time. So she starts to realize that, and the app is also helping her navigate this entire complex terrain because it's giving her solutions quickly. So perhaps her search time for solutions is reducing, and she is observing the different kinds of content that her daughter Isha is exposed to, which ones she takes warmly to and which ones she doesn't, and therefore what can she tweak in the learning journey of the child. She also has this bunch of little ones who come to her for her tuitions, the preschoolers, and she tells us that the preschool teachers have a lot of access to teaching learning material, which they create on their own, or they are exposed to training programs or new narratives on what's happening in education. But as a tutor at home, I'm not exposed to too many of these things, and the technology solution helps me access all of those things on her fingertips. So she is of the firm opinion that learning should be enjoyable, it should not be a battleground, and she works hard to maintain this balance for her child, because she again has a long term vision in mind that if learning becomes enjoyable for the child, it develops the sense of curiosity and love for learning, which will help her over the long term, and she wants to keep it that way. um she is, like I said, attentive, flexible, and always willing to reflect on her own practices and see what she needs to tweak about them. And yeah, this is about how she's using or interacting with technology. So it's three different caregivers or types of caregivers. When we gave them the same app, one of them told us, one set of consumers or use caregivers told us that this is complete rubbish, it's not really working for my child, and we tried hard and things like that. And another set of people, caregivers, told us that they are using it, they are trying to discover, explore more, and put it to use. And it's, it was, if we would have not really gone deeper and thought about these personas and why they interact so differently with technology, maybe we would have thought that there is there is a set of users or caregivers for whom we are not able to devise meaningful solutions. But we stopped short of that, and we were able to understand what would work for each caregiver persona. So hope we are able to, through these personas, create resources where you will also be able to apply some of the learnings back to your own work, and when you design programs and solutions for your caregiver community. And that's it from me. But Varun has some very interesting things, Varun and the team, and we will go through it together.
Thank you for that, Reshma. Okay, Reshma, so I'm going to have you set context for the activity that we're going to do next, which is the persona quiz. Basically, I will be sharing on screen a few verbatims that Reshma picked up from the ground, from her research. And it will be up to you all to identify which caregiver persona or archetype this adheres to. Yeah. Does anyone have any questions? You can enter your responses in the chat, yeah? Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Great, Reshma, I'll have you lead the
Okay.
people through this, yeah.
So here's the first first thought. Here's a mother who says, people will think that I'm a very caring person and I really take care of my child a lot. So remember, like I told you about the one who is hiding behind the smoke screen of, looking invested but not having the bandwidth to invest. And there is one who's constantly battling two different fronts, and there is one who is reflective but more sure of her decisions. So who could this be? And you could put in your responses in the chat box.
Yeah, if you'd like to unmute and share, please go for that too.
Yeah, that's. So there was struggler, solution seeker, and solution creator. Who does this sound like? That take a wild guess.
Hi Reshma, this is Shweta here.
Hi, Shweta.
Hi, I think this falls between either the first or the second one because the focus I'm looking at is that people will think. So rather than focusing on what she thinks she needs to be doing, she's worried more about what people will think. So I think it could fall somewhere in between. I think the struggler mom was really struggling where I don't know, was in a space to think of what people would think or not. Probably the second one where she's still in between the two, worlds where she's wondering what it is. So my guess is that, but I think it would fall either in the first or the second one.
So anyone else wants to give it a shot? But very sharp, I think, where you said that people will think, and the struggler mom is is drowning so much in her own reality that she's really not able to surface above that and think what people would think. And it is really the solution seeker mom who's
Seeker.
thinking this way. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll go to the next. So here's a person who says life is fast, everything should be fast.
To me, this sounds like the struggler who's looking for immediate solutions.
Yeah, yeah,
Anyone
yeah.
else?
Yeah. Anyone else also has a different perspective, because these are things that just the struggler mom, yeah. If someone thinks could be a solution seeker for whatever reason, please do share, because we would also be able to see this in a new light then. So Elizabeth, you want to tell us why you thought it was the third persona, which is the solution creator?
Maybe because everything should be fast means trying to think of there could be a solution to.
She's possibly trying to reach her solutions fast.
Yes, because life, everything should be fast means there should be it's possible that there could be a solution. It need not be slow. So
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, for us, this came out of the struggler mom, but you could, I mean, it's again depends on the overall personality, because when you interact with the caregiver, you interact with not just the caregiver for a snippet of her life, but for the overall, you have a holistic context. So maybe something in her life might fit into this if that's how you see it. But for us, it came out through the struggler persona. Should we go next? So for the first time, my husband became an animal character when my child was crying. Who could this be? Two or three, yeah. But if you really have to pick one, Varun, then there'll be some cues here. So really keep questioning yourself on how you can separate the two personas and treat them differently. A lot of people say three. Three, yeah. Yeah, it came from three. It came from the solution creator. Because if you notice the first, the second, the solution seeker persona is living in this world where, I mean, is living in a family where the context is that she's a lone. She almost feels like she's fighting a lone battle. So the husband is not really aligned with her vision of parenting and playful parenting, etc. Right? We'll go to the next one. दिस मॉम इज सेइंग मुझे अच्छा लग रहा है कि मेरी बात मान रही है मेरी बेटी और जिद नहीं कर रही है. आई एम लाइकिंग द फैक्ट दैट माई चाइल्ड इज लिसनिंग टू मी एंड नॉट रियली बीइंग स्टबर्न विथ मी एनीमोर. Yeah. Hita, any reason why you felt it was three? Two. Okay, you changed your mind. And Radhika,
I also mistyped.
Radhika, why one?
Just the sheer relief that, okay, my child is listening to me.
That's interesting. Like she's looking for that relief. Okay. So before I give away the answer, I still want to understand why 3. Rekha, any thoughts?
Yes, but when mother is actually exploring and trying to involve the child obviously listens to the mother. So I thought it would be third one.
Okay. So that's another way of looking at it, that you ladder up to the fact that the reason why the child could be listening is because the mom is more attuned to her. This actually came
Yes.
one, because it feels like she feels relieved. Okay. So the sense of relief was not something which I had noticed, but it's interesting that you noticed that difference. This actually came from the persona 2. You know, the fact that the more the mother was trying to correct the child, the more she was becoming the policeman, so to say, and creating that whole strained atmosphere and leading to a fact where the child was not listening to anything, even things which were good for them. So when she was able to separate, when the mutuality, when the shared reality happened, she was able to see a change in the fact that the child is now able to listen to her. And that's the context to this verbatim. Okay, we'll go next.
We'll share
Yeah.
one more after this, and then
And then we'll stop. Yeah. This is similar. Varun, you want to skip this and go to the other one? This is similar to what we've done earlier. Okay. When my daughter watches Shinchan, she actually talks like him. It's a little tricky because not much context is given here, but still.
I guess I would say number 2 over here.
Number 2. Okay.
Yeah.
Hita says 2. Radhika says 1. Okay. Let's see. So, I just want to ask the people who have written 1. Anybody wants to share why 1? Or let me ask you this differently, that will this bother the mom that the child watches Shinchan? Will it bother the struggler? She is aware and seeking solution. Okay.
Yeah, I said 1 because you just want the child to do something, right? Like not get into trouble. So perhaps this is even aspirational for the struggler mom.
Okay, so you're looking at it from the point of view of aspiration, which is quite possible because these moms also feel good about the fact that their kids speak in the Peppa Pig accent. So yes, that's quite a possibility. Anyone who shared, 2, like why 2?
I think for me, maybe just like noticing this at such a deep level, right? They're paying attention. They don't know what to do about it really, but they're paying attention and to this switch that happens in their child.
So the noticing is where this verbatim is actually anchored. The fact that the mother is actually noticing nuances of the child watching TV and then what happens as a result of the child, watching TV and all. And this came from the third persona, because that lady is the one who is the most observant, reflective, and thinking about the implication of the fact that if she watches Shin-chan and she starts to talk angrily like him.
1 minute, excuse me.
Yeah.
You had something on that for the solution creator, no? Because on that slide, you had the content children watch influence their mood and behavior, no? So
Right. You picked
this
it up from
mother,
there?
yes. So I thought maybe it's
Lovely, which is actually where it came from. It came from the solution creator, mom.
Oh, so it's not 1 or 2. Okay. Oh.
So different perspectives, but like if perhaps we start becoming a little, a little more analytical in terms of finding cues to our caregivers and become investigative with them, we might be able to understand what this, and there will be overlaps in the personas. So there could be a time where the struggler, there could be a time where the solution seeker becomes the struggler when the support system is stripped off for X amount of time, or vice versa. There could be a journey that the caregiver could take between being the struggler to the solution seeker to the solution creator if she gets enough resources. There are all sorts of possibilities.
So did you talk to dads too, or we only have moms, no? So caregivers, like,
Yeah, in this particular research, we've not spoken to dads, but Bachpan Manao as a team has other research where dads have been spoken to as caregivers, and that is a deep dive into how the dads interact with the kids.
Reshma, you mentioned urban and rural or like small towns, but overall, what was the socio-economic background of a lot of these parents?
A lot. So our focus was to not really go, too low in terms of the socioeconomic. So if we went by, the older socioeconomic classification, which nowadays nobody follows, there would be the CDE, the moms who are not really literate and don't have access to technology, etc. We avoided those because when we speak, we want developmental inputs as well. We want smartphone usage as well. But at the same time, we don't want to go too high because then we don't want to go to the A+A kind of socioeconomic classification. We want to stick to the moms. Actually, our recruitment criteria for in this case was two factors. One is that they should have their personal smartphone, which these days a lot of people tend to have, and they should at least have finished their 12th grade.
Got it. Done.
Reshma, if I can ask you, sorry, I don't have my video on for
Okay.
some technical issue, but I wanted to ask you, and I think this may be helpful for everyone here. In our own kind of designing of program and trying to understand personas, your experience on actually getting a lot of these answers comes from the kind of questions you ask. So if you can just spend maybe 2 minutes to tell us about how to kind of ask better questions when doing such a study and understanding of the user, the persona that we're kind of trying to connect with and understand better for various programs, just on just the line of questioning. If any you have insights you can share.
So, in the interest of time, of course, the rapport building and questioning itself is a skill. But one thing which I have learned over the years and which I now deliberately use is a lot of the times we go with a preset list of questions in mind or on a sheet of paper, and we go and ask those questions. And anything the person says which is out of that question seems to us that it is out of context, and therefore we discourage those answers or we move on, etc. What I tend to do is I do not keep a list of questions handy. I just keep the overall objectives of the research handy and a few areas which I necessarily need covered. And then I build questions based on the conversation that we are having at the spur of the moment. So that keeps the person engaged. And then if I go with that premise, everything that the person says is relevant and valid as long as I can steer the course of the conversation to the objectives that I have in mind.
Super, super. I think Radhika had her hand up.
I know that's okay. Just given time.
Okay. So then I will just share a poll for the audience to answer, and then we can close immediately after. If you'd like to stay back and ask questions to Reshma, we could do that for the next 5 to 10 minutes after the poll. And I completely understand that we're out of time, and if you'd like to leave, you're more than welcome to. But if you could spend 2 to 3 minutes to just answer this poll, and then we can close.
I think
Also, before closing, if you could share, someone was to share the links to the resources.
Yeah. Hema, could you please put it up in the chat box? Okay, wait. Oh no, the
So-
poll has ended.
So basically, there's a post which has a write-up from Reshma on the insights from this research. It also has the research report itself, and it has the posters that you've seen today in the masterclass. It's all available on the Bachpan Manao website now, and thank you, Reshma, for making this available to everybody. The link is in the chat.
If anyone would also like to share the responses to their questions, if it's too long to type out, please do. Would anyone like to share which persona you encounter the most on the ground? Or if anyone would like to share which persona you're currently designing the program for?
So Varun, I'll go. Hi, Reshma, I'm
Yeah.
Shweta, and we work with an organization called Gyan Prakash Foundation. Most of our parents are from the rural settings, and in terms of the socioeconomic status, the way they would talk about it right now, I think they would fall under the ones who are grade 12 or lower. But many of them have access to smartphones. So I think for us, most of the persona, I think they fall between 1 and 2, the struggler and the seeker. But I would say that there's a lot of willingness to accept new information and learn, because the intention or the aspiration for children and education and doing well is very high. So I would say that in terms of their aspiration, the levels are quite high, and so very open to looking for new solutions and all of that. So I think we design our program also from that perspective about parents who are struggling. So making it easy for them to access technology solutions, but also making it very relevant to what is contextual to them. So I think that's where we belong. So it's very interesting to see that there are, you can give names, not talk about labels as such, that there are certain, I could resonate with what you're talking about. And I think the more in terms of their the resources that they have and social support, uh, mothers who struggle are really the ones where the support is less in terms of resources as well as social support. So getting the family together, getting other people in the family to help the mother and the child, I think is an important learning in this also. Yeah.
And did you see these two personas? So you said that caregivers fall between the struggler and the solution seeker. Before, it's like, did you see them as with a unified lens in terms of just seeing them as caregivers, or were you able to get some sense of the differences that they exhibit?
So I think the more you start working with them and understand them, that's when you start seeing, where you tend to think that most of them are struggling, most of them don't have the knowledge to do what it requires. But once they start working and once they start using content, they see the relevance, then there is more intention into it, then they are more reflective about the practices. They're observing how the children react to any solution that is given, that is relevant to them, contextual to them. When they see the children happy, and just like you talked about, when they see the parent child bond strengthening, then the willingness to do more things with the child, the willingness to engage more with the child is higher when they see the response from the child.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you. It's very insightful. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just sharing the results to the questions. Can everyone see this?
Yeah.
Can you see the responses?
I don't think we can see the responses.
Okay,
Or
looks
I'm
like
able to make sense.
No, we can't see
No,
the
we can't
response.
see.
You can just see the 100% answer.
Yeah.
okay. Looks like I have to open another browser for this, and it's asking me to sign in. Okay, I will share these responses with you all then,
Sure.
in our newsletter, and get back to you all on this. But I guess we can end the masterclass over here. So thank you for that, Reshma. This is a lovely and very, very insightful masterclass, I think, for us at Bachparmana as well. Connecting the celebration angle with the caregiver is an important aspect, because we are able to see how much, when you start celebrating the caregiver as well, irrespective of the persona that they are, whichever archetype that they are, they start recognizing that what they're doing is valuable, right? Whatever little it is. And once that starts to happen, you slowly start to see the mindset of abundance start to sort of set in, and the way of seeing itself changes. So thank you for bringing in that nuance of just a way of looking and seeing that is very different. So thanks for sharing that. And thanks to all of the audience and participants that were here. We will see you again soon. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for joining. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.